thanks very much indeed for joining us on Afternoon Live, Mr. Balls. Good luck. What's going to be the biggest challenge for you?
Thank you. The biggest challenge is to get round to all the constituencies in the country, to talk to, I hope, thousands and thousands of party members, trade union members, but actually also to talk to the voters themselves and to hear from them what they think we need to do to make sure that we can be on the side of working people and get back into government. And as I've said in my launch, this can't be about us talking to ourselves. This is not just about the Labour Party, it is about the country. We've got to start with what the public are telling us. And they're saying that there were some really good things we did in the last 12 years, but we didn't get it all right. And we weren't always, they think, clearly enough on their side, standing up for their concerns. And so I'm going to listen and listen hard, and that's the most important thing.
Why wasn't the party listening before the election?
Well, I think it's hard, and we've all been fighting a big general election campaign and talked to thousands of voters. Sometimes it was about policy. People said that, for example, I think on education funding, educational maintenance allowances, tuition fees, they felt we were putting barriers in the way of their children going to college, going to university. Sometimes it was, though, about communication, because if you take the point system on immigration, everybody was saying we've got to be tougher on immigration. We know immigration is important, particularly for our health service, but also we need to control it. Actually, as Phil Willis, the former immigration minister, I should say, said today, the point system is the right policy, but too many people didn't know about it. And then I think sometimes it felt as though we were having internal debates which were turning the public off, talking about choice and contestability and purchase of provider splits in public services. That's not the language of the public. The public are saying to us, the voters are saying, is my school a good school? If my child falls behind, do they get extra help? If my parent, my friend, my family member is diagnosed with cancer, will they get fast treatment? And I think we got to the right place on some of those policy areas, but too late. And by that time, people were thinking that we weren't listening, we weren't really on our side, and therefore they weren't listening to us. And we've got to turn that round as a real matter of priority, not just in seats like this where we won here in Gedling, but also I was in Basildon this morning, Sherwood up the road in Nottingham where we didn't win, and we've got to be out and hearing what the people are saying to us.
To coin a phrase, what about those that would suggest vote Ed, get Gordon?
Well, look, I don't think people are going to look backwards in this election campaign. They're going to look forward, and as you know, Ed Miliband and I worked with Gordon Brown in the Treasury in the late 1990s. David Miliband worked with Tony Blair, but I don't think that anybody thinks Ed Miliband is get Gordon, David's get Tony. I don't think they'll think the same thing about that about me. It's a chance for us all to come out and say, this is who we are, this is where we come from, this is what makes us tick, this is how we want to do politics, to actually show as well the people who are supporting us. And people will look at our teams and say, what does that tell us about the kind of people and politicians they are? And it's not going to be about Blair or Brown. It's actually going to be about who is on the side of working people in this country. And we've got to make it clear. It is a reforming Labour Party, not an unprincipled Liberal Conservative coalition, which I am fearful for what they will do to families in our country.
What do you think that you will be able to bring to the post that the other candidates wouldn't?
Well, I think our generation has got a real responsibility to make sure that we don't start defining ourselves against the other candidates from the beginning and make this internal or divisive. David's been a brilliant Foreign Secretary. Ed Miliband, who I know really well, was a pioneering climate change secretary. Andy Burnham, that Hillsborough speech he made was a very important and powerful moment. They're all great people. Whoever wins, I'll back them 100%, whoever else comes in as well. But let's be clear, leadership is about being strong, it's about being able to make decisions, it's about being able to build a consensus and explain sometimes when decisions are hard. It's about being able to say I'm rooted and my values and where I come from are what are reflected in the decisions I make. But I think most of all, if you're going to be a good leader, you've got to listen and hear before you act, and you've got to trust people to come into a room with you, to a group of people here in a cafe, and trust them to tell you what they think, and not fear all the time that getting a tough message will be hard for you to take. I think you've got to be open and to be honest and to be down to earth and to hear. And I think that's what I can do. It's what I've been doing for the last 18 months in Morley and Outwood, as you know, because you saw it yourself. It was a tough fight. The Tories threw everything at me. but I won, and I won because I listened.
What a shame, what a pity that all these first-class candidates that are coming forward now didn't have the courage to do that before the election. Perhaps you would have won.
Well, I, for 18 months, did public meetings on immigration, on GP opening hours, on the economy, and a political party has got to be united, and I fought hard for our manifesto, and I believe in our manifesto, and I think that many of the things which we've done in the last 12 years have been transformatory for our country, whether it's the Sheer Start Children's Centre here, the investment in our schools. I think the offer we had, on one-to-one tuition for a child who falls behind, that's what parents want. So I'm not going to start turning around and dissing our past. I don't think that's sensible. I think many of the things we did were great. But I think at the same time, we all knew that in some policy areas, and sometimes in our communication too, we weren't getting it right. And that is something we saw in particular through the election campaign. As you know, because I said this to you before, I thought all the way round we could turn it round. We were turning it round in the final week, and David Cameron thought he was going to be the Prime Minister, get a majority, and he failed. And so I'm not going to say we got it right or got it wrong 100%, we didn't. But it's important we learn the lessons, and that's what we've got to do.
A quick thought, Mr. Balls. I wonder what you think about that note that Liam Byrne, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, left on his desk to his the next in command after he'd left, saying, so sorry, no money, good luck. Doesn't really help the party, does it, going forward?
I think, look, it was a joke, and Liam left it as a kind of, as a humorous thing for his predecessor. I remember in reading the biographies of Wilson and how when the Conservative government went out in 1964 and Howard Wilson came in 1964 to be the new government, Reggie Maudlin was whispering things to Jim Callaghan, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, about the state of the public finances. There's a fine tradition of parliamentarians doing these kind of things. I think to announce it in the way the Conservatives and Liberals did and try and make it something which was serious and real, I thought it was a bit out of order, really. I thought it was a bit unfair on Liam myself.
As far as, that takes me on to my next point, which is in today's newspapers, some of the civil servants that worked with Labour, now working with the Conservatives, were suggesting that you were adopting a scorched earth policy and spending money left, right and centre because you knew that you were going to lose. What would you say in response to that?
I would say absolutely 100% untrue, and I would refute it entirely. Take my department. We announced in the final weeks building schools for the future, the transformation of new schools in Cumbria, in Oxfordshire, in Wakefield, in Gateshead, and we did that with the full agreement of the Chancellor, the Treasury and my permanent secretary, and the Conservatives to try and are now putting these things about to conceal them, and said to all of those communities, the governor, sorry, bets are off, you'll not get a brand new. I've not seen the detail of the issues which are raised in the paper today, but for example, the issue of unitary authority in Norwich and in Exeter, I thought that was exactly the right thing to do from a policy point of view, and if the elected ministers of the day decided that, it was fully their prerogative to go ahead with those plans. And I am sorry that it now seems as though the Liberal Conservatives will not go ahead with those policies in Norwich and Exeter. I think it will be to the detriment of those cities.
Final thoughts, Mr. Balls, if you would please. I note that as far as women MPs are concerned, you have more in your party than all of the other parties put together, but no woman candidate on the leadership challenge.
Well, I'm very pleased that my campaign, I have Sharon Hodgson running my campaign with Vernon Cooper, my two campaign managers are Anne Snellgrove and Sarah McCarthy-Fry, both MPs who then lost their seats and are fighting hard to get those seats back, but will be working with me. And as you know, I said to Yvette, my wife Yvette Cooper, who was the Work and Pensions Minister, I said to her that she should decide, and if she wanted to stand for leader. She's been an MP longer than me. She's, I think, brilliant myself, although I would say that. I said to her, if she wanted to stand, she would have my full support and I would stand aside. She thought about that and decided now was not her time. And that was her decision, and that's why I'm now making the announcement I'm making today. I really hope that we will have a woman come into the race, but that's for others to decide and not for me.
After warm words like that, I would have thought you'd get a nice special cooked tea tonight. Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Balls.
Well, no,
it's a pleasure to talk to you.
As you know, Kay, I have to do the cooking in our household. I have to do the cooking.
OK, well, a special tea for her then. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Mr. Bulls. We appreciate it. Thank you. Got a thought? News at sky.com 84501. Oh, sorry about the voice there. Now, live to space in just a moment in the International Space Station, where the